So it's exciting, guys. We're expanding like we talked about. The technology is getting little by little better. So let's just continue to pursue that goal together to reach where we wanted to go. I'm going to share with you two things, but before I do, I want to give you guys a little bit of information on this series on the Good Steward. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you is part of this series came out of a conviction that I felt God put in my heart for me personally. And so what I'm sharing with you, I want you to get the concept that what I'm sharing with you is the principles I feel God is showing me on how to be a better steward. And I believe that if we all apply those principles, it'll change our lives. But I think there's a negative connotation to the word conviction. And so I want to really replace that word with being convinced. And I believe that the Holy Spirit has convinced me that these principles will make me more productive and will make me more fruitful in my personal life and in my business. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So conviction isn't a negative thing. It's a good thing. It's a great thing, because without being convinced, there's an old quote I used to say, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And the reality is, until we change what we're convinced of, we can't change. And it begins with that process of conviction, which really is being convinced. So I hope and I pray that you guys will be convinced that there is a major shift. And if you apply these principles, it'll change your life. So before I recap, I want to share with you guys a quick story that happened on Friday. As you guys know, my wife truly showed me on Friday her commitment to not wanting to have a baby. We had surgery on Friday, and thank God everything's well. She's at home with the kids. I will not lie to you. The moment that they took her in, I was freaking out. I was so nervous, and I don't know why. I mean, it's supposed to be a standard procedure, but anytime you go under the knife, I don't know. I just didn't feel good. And so finally, when the doctor came up to me and he said, hey, everything was perfect. Everything went well. In about 30 minutes, I'll call you in. You'll be able to spend time with her until she recovers, and then you go home. And so I was like, oh, thank God, like everything's good. I can breathe now. And so about 30 minutes in, sure enough, they called me. I went in there and I sat with her, and we're joking and talking, and she was getting better. And right before, in fact, while we were waiting for them to get the person with a wheelchair to transport her to go to the car, all of a sudden I hear a doctor in the room next to me going up to a gentleman that was probably in his mid-40s when I first came in. I noticed that he was just kind of still passed out sleeping. So when he woke up, they started sharing with him some terrible news that as they started checking him, they found some pretty advanced colon cancer in his body. And so as I'm sitting there, I'm telling my wife, shh, I got to hear this. It just hit me, and it would hit me like a brick. I really just felt, here I am. We just got great news. My wife's about to go. But then here's a guy next to me, and literally he's hearing the worst news he's ever heard. And I mean, it was pretty impactful, and it kind of upset me how matter of fact the doctor was. It kind of was like, so this was going to happen. This is what happened to you. This is what we'll try, but we won't know until this happens. And it was very much like cold. And so as they finally rolled the wheelchair, there's two ladies that came to help my wife. We set her down. We start going. I'm holding onto the wheelchair with her too as we're going through. And I just felt like God say, you need to go in that room and you need to pray. And the first thing that happened was, in my mind, I'm like, I don't know that guy. I have no idea what beliefs he has. I mean, he just had bad news. I just happened to glance in the corner of my eye, and I see his woman like crying over him, and her tears are literally hitting him in the forehead and just running down his face, and he's not even moving. And so I'm like, I don't know, maybe I didn't hear it. Let's move faster, right? But then it like started leaping inside of me, like, go in there. And so then I just obeyed, and I went in there. And when I walked in the room, I literally looked at him and I looked at her and I said, guys, I know you don't know me, but I really feel in my heart like I need to lay hands on you and pray for you. Is that okay with you? And he barely just looked at me. He just kind of glanced up. He was in that much shock. And his wife just broke open and started saying, please. So we laid hands, we prayed. I literally felt the heat leave my hand. It was actually like that physical. And then I just saw his eyes open and he looked. And then afterwards I prayed and I walked away. And you know what? I don't have a clue what's going to happen to this guy. I don't know if he supernaturally got healed, which I hope, or if there's a journey along the way. But the important thing is that I did my part. Does that make sense? And I was able to go home and I felt so accomplished, not because of how great Rick was or my prayer, but because I was obedient to that moment. Does that make sense? And so a lot of times being a good steward isn't about, these fun things. Sometimes it's about being obedient, even in the awkward moments when you feel like, I don't feel comfortable. Well, that's the moment you need to step into, and that's where you grow. And so I want to make sure that you keep that in your heart and your mind. This may have been the thing that changed that guy's life, or it may have just been one seed that God wanted to plant, and he's going to bring a harvest in the future. So remember that sometimes it's in the uncomfortable that we find God and that we find our purpose, okay? The next one we talked about last week was master what you have before you ask or expect for more. And we talked the gradual steps from novice, apprentice, practitioner, and ultimately an expert. And we talked about the mistake that most people make when they're chasing the shiny object is that they become novice. They may even reach apprentice level, and then they will repeat apprentice level for the rest of their lives. And that is really sad, guys. Trust me when I say do it with excellence and get good at what you do before you expect something else. The next one that I talked about is be honest but shrewd. And we talked about how that was a biblical, what I felt was a contradiction. But the reality is to be shrewd is to act with foresight. So be not only intentional, but strategic about your opportunity so that you can maximize those objectives. And today, I'm going to share with you another principle that I have been convinced 100% that if you apply this, it will change your life. And that is embrace a life of discipline. Now, when I say discipline, everybody thinks of when their kids get spanked for being naughty. And yes, that is a part of that. But the one I'm talking about is a discipline where you live your life, where you're constantly looking to improve yourself and you hold yourself accountable to the direction that you're going. And discipline does not restrict you, by the way. It liberates you to reach a higher calling and you reach your higher goals. Now, most people buck the system. They truly buck. In fact, Sam and I were just talking about that on the way here, is that a lot of times we feel like, wait a minute, I'm kind of a free spirit. You know, like when you put restrictions on me, you actually hinder me. But the reality is you need those restrictions to really be able to use all of the bandwidth that is within you. Does that make sense? It's the same thing. That's why I chose a picture of this horse. We all know that some of these horses and studs, they are powerful. But when they have distractions, they are completely useless. You can have a horse that is the most strongest horse in the race who's not focused, that will lose a race because his mind is somewhere else and he's not able to produce or tap into that potential that is within the stud. When we did the Kilcooley Abbey Estates project, one of the coolest things that I learned was, because part of the deal, if you guys remember, that's the castle in Ireland. And one of the principles that I learned there is there was a gentleman there who was using part of the castle. There was a section on it, which is where they had the area for all the horses. And he was breeding extremely expensive horses. When they tell you that a vial of, you know what, costs about $5,000, I was like, are you kidding me? People pay $5,000 for that? You know, I'm going to start a new business. I'm just kidding. But so, so in the joke, as we were talking about it, I'm like, how could a vial of this be so valuable, right? And so as the guy started talking, well, you have to understand, I mean, number one, we breed these horses. We train these horses. We discipline them. And then we breed the top producer. And then that offspring then is grown, and we continue to train it and discipline it. And of course, we harness them and we teach them how to stay focused so that they can tap into the strength that they have, the true potential. And as he's talking, I'm thinking, wow, isn't that us? And then what's funny is this gentleman is a little bit overweight. What I mean by a little bit, I'm being very respectful, but multiply that by 10, you know what I mean? And finally, we're talking one day, and he's talking about like the process, the amount of food they spend, because he's justifying why $5,000 for a vial of this stuff. And he said, no, I mean, I get pay only for the best of food. I pay only for this. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. If only we did that to ourselves. And he literally just shut up immediately. He was like, oh, because here he is spending thousands of dollars to discipline his horse, his studs, to feed them with the best foods. But what is he eating? Doritos. As he's telling me this story. Do you follow what I'm saying? There's something wrong with that picture. And so I think that day he got a little bit of a picture of, man, I value my horses more than I value me. And I'm the owner of the horses. And so again, it's something, again, to be convinced that discipline empowers you. And that's the reason why I wanted to share this quote with you. As you guys know, this is on my computer. So this is kind of really near and dear to me. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And let me tell you, I've been around for 15 years doing this stuff. I've met a lot of people with a lot of talent, with incredible skills. People that I'm like, my gosh, this person, I mean, they could change the world. But then I see them 5 years later, they haven't done a single freaking thing. They've literally lost all the potential. Do you know why? Because they don't have discipline. Because what they keep using is, and this sometimes is hard for people that are very talented, is what happens is you are so talented that you attract eyeballs. And I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. I mean, Scotty's a man. And Scotty gets puffed up all of a sudden. And Scotty's like, yeah, I deserve better. And before Scotty ever develops the discipline to actually be good at what he does, he starts chasing something else because he deserves more. What he doesn't realize is that by not going through that training, by not being disciplined, he became worthless. And over time, a horse, a stud that doesn't perform gets kicked out. I am telling you guys, that's how powerful that is. And so one of the principles I want to say within this, embrace a life of discipline, is talent without discipline will never go very far in their lives. I can assure you of that, guys. And so don't be that person, because I chose many of you because you're so talented. But if you don't discipline yourself, it is worthless. I'm telling you, I've seen countless people, and some people even in high school, that I remember looking up to and saying, my goodness, I mean, this guy is the coolest guy on the planet. And then later on, I find out this guy's homeless. Or you find out this other guy's now applying for a job in my company. And I'm like, I used to look up to you. Are you kidding me? What happened? And what happened was he had all this raw talent, but no discipline. Some of you guys have so much power, and I've quoted you guys many times, man, this person could really kill it. But if you don't have discipline, I'm telling you, over time, you will find out there's nothing there for you. There's no substance. The next thing I want to put is this: putting blinders on only frees you to focus and develop your potential, guys. So if you want to be successful, if you really want to tap into the RPMs that God built inside of you, put the blinders on. Stop looking at all this other stuff. Trust me when I say it is literally all about building that discipline. And I am convinced, and so every day I'm working harder and harder in different areas of my life that I want to see improvements in. The next thing I want to share with you about this principle: what does it mean to embrace a life of discipline? All right, so we talked about the talent without discipline. We talked about putting the blinders on. And next one is, you can see the fruit of those who apply discipline. And so you don't just say discipline, you live it out. And what happens is it starts generating fruit. It starts generating productivity. And those are the people that you listen to. Those are the people that you follow. We've talked about many famous names before. Look at Warren Buffett. I say that because we're in the investment space, right? When I say Buffett, whether you know anything about investing or not, what do you know? He's the man. He knows his stuff, right? Why? Because the fruit that he produces is very evident. And therefore, he has authority because of what he has produced. So my question to you is, what fruit are you producing? If you're not producing as a person of discipline, I'm telling you, you're literally never going to get to that next level that you're looking for. And that ties in directly with this piece, which is you can fake words, but you can't fake results. And that's something I want to say, because a lot of the guys, especially in this community, in our space, unfortunately, it's riddled with people that are renting Ferraris and taking pictures next to, some other guy's car or some other guy's house. Like, I really hope one day they catch somebody on video where he's like, yeah, acting like he's a hustler, and the guy that owns the house walks out and he's like, hey, get out of my property. I can't wait. That's going to happen one day. But the point I'm trying to make is, you can fake all the words you say about being successful. In fact, you could even sound sophisticated. You could even sound like you know what you're talking about. But the proof is in the pudding, right? Because if you live it out and you're consistent, you know what happens? That result is what speaks for you. You don't have to speak for it anymore. And so it's all about being consistent, disciplining yourself, and letting the results speak for you. That's the biggest power and the biggest authority that you could ever have, guys. So if you get anything, remember that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Just remember that principle. It's so powerful. And all of you guys have talent. So I want to challenge you to maximize that talent. Tap into that power that God built inside of you by being disciplined. The law in the Bible, and again, this is the last sermon I'll preach on this, but the law in the Bible, everybody looks at it like it's a bad thing. Like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do this. No, if you really break down the law has two components. One of them talks about how to deal with God, your relationship with God, and the other one is how to deal with your neighbor, right? And if you just learn that, it would free you to live life to the fullest. But the problem is, we're so fixated on, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, instead of saying, wow, because of this, look at how much I can enjoy, how much I can experience. And that's where depth comes in, guys. So make sure that you literally convince yourself that this is valuable for you. Discipline is good. It's not a bad thing. So here's a powerful question I want to leave you with before we tap into the next one, which is, does my life, and what I mean by that is every area, because what happens when we ask this question is everybody then comes back, well, I'm pretty good at this. And what they're not doing is reflecting on every area. There's an area in all of our lives where we all need this, guys. So that's why I said in every area, reflect. All right, so here it is. Does my life reflect the fruits of discipline? If not, am I willing to humble myself and pay the price of discipline to reap the rewards of freedom? There is at least one area in your life where I can guarantee you that you are not living to your full potential. And I want to challenge you, dig into that area and deal with it. But you have to ask powerful words in order to begin to penetrate. Sam and I talked about a question that literally was posed in our leadership meeting. that in my mind, yes, I thought it was valuable for me, but it rocked his world. It really challenged him to dig in and realize how much potential he had. But had he not asked that question to himself, he would have never tapped into the power that was already there. And so that's why I always finish this with questions, because I want to provoke you to think, to dig inside, to turn the soil in your heart so that you can ultimately start seeing it spring forth and get fruit. Everybody with me?